Okay, we are now live. Lights, camera, action.
Something like that. Hold on, give me a second. Is there a way to like put it's hard to see me on the screen. Like the way this is working is like I'm in a corner. Is there a way to like put us side by side? Do you know how to do that? I'll just look at my OBS. Okay, well, we will just have to deal with it, gang. Let me adjust things accordingly.
Wait a minute. I got it. I clicked and dragged. Is that good?
It doesn't. It looks the same on my end. I can move me, but I can't make me bigger than I am. I can move my position.
Hey, bigger doesn't mean better.
You know what? Size matters. Don't kid yourself. But no, this'll have to do. This'll have to do. We're gonna get it. But yeah. So for those of you who are watching on my end, this gentleman here, Nevin Gussack, invited me to come on his show and talk to him about a few things. And I'll let him kick it off and introduce everything. But go ahead, sir. Please.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wick. I really appreciate it. I appreciate being streamed on your show as well. That's very kind of you. I'm Nevin Gussack. I'm a streamer like Wick and many others in this space. The name of my show is New Ideas, which I'm also streaming on my end as well. I also have a Substack essay page called Wilderness of Mirrors. I also have self-published books on Amazon, and I've interviewed a bunch of people on my program. I've been on other programs like Connor's, Dylan Burns TV, been on a few panels, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate the opportunity to chat, Wick.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Just making sure everyone can hear you on my end. Sorry for, like, every time I start the stream, I got to make sure I got the audio right, because sometimes, you know, streamer stuff, you mute yourself on accident and things. But I think everyone's good. I think everyone can hear us, and people will kind of trickle in as it goes. So, no, thank you again. I was telling you this backstage, but I do appreciate the invite. I always appreciate the chance to have a civil discussion, a chat. And we'll see where this goes. I'm just really curious. So, yeah, thank you for the invite. What are we talking about today? What are we going to go over? What did you want to invite me on for?
Well, I'm going to confess that I'm a secret fascist. So
again, damn, I get a lot of those.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I figure I'd throw a little monkey wrench or a little humor here. No, definitely not. Not a fascist. I've studied fascism and I've written about fascism and National Socialism. No, I'm a radical civic nationalist. I'm going to be transparent with you and the audience. I'm out here, obviously, not only to meet other people in the space where we have common concerns, common interests, but also to really spread the word about my worldview of radical civic nationalism. It's very syncretic. It's basically, you could describe it very simply as radical centrism from the mid to the beginning of the 20th century. So we'll start it with that.
Okay. When you talk about radical civic nationalism, what I think and what comes to mind, and maybe this is, you can correct me if I'm having an incorrect perception of this, but have you ever read Heinlein at all? Starship Troopers?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read it, to be honest with you. I'm more of a nonfiction guy.
Fair enough. In the book Starship Troopers, not the movie or the show or whatever, right? But the book, the concept is one that to become a citizen, you have to actually engage in some sort of service, whether that be military or otherwise. So when I think of radical civic nationalism, that's kind of what comes to mind. What is one's duty to one's nation, right? And I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I'm coming into this conversation kind of as my mental image of what you're talking about. But if I'm getting it wrong or if I'm on the wrong track, please let me know.
No, and yeah, I knew where you were headed with that. Once you mentioned Robert Heinlein and you started to unwrap, I knew exactly, because I'm familiar with the general storyline, and that's a fair statement. There is radical civic nationalism. Let me explain it. Civic, for those who don't know, they think nationalism. I knew you've had these discussions about that.
We'll talk about nationalism in a second, but I want to get your views out first. But
sure.
Go ahead,
yeah, there's duties when it comes to especially the powerful elements who monopolize control in society. What we've seen over the past many decades is the very powerful not living by duties, but by basically doing whatever they want, selling out our national security, selling out our shared burden and prosperity, and that has harmed the nation. And there needs to be a balance between individual rights and duties. Now, does that bleed into totalitarianism? That's where I draw the line. That's why it's civic nationalism. And that needs to be upheld by public law. There needs to be more of a culture of common citizenship reinstated. Policies that used to exist in this country. So, I understand where you're coming from, but really have no fear. Much of this was tried in the past. And precisely what I'm trying to do is avoid more and more people becoming alienated and embracing that sort of militaristic totalitarian vision that you're kind of outlining there.
So, nationalism in the past, at least as it's worked out in the real world instead of on paper, because one of the things that you'll notice about nationalism specifically is there's not really any good definition. Almost everyone means something slightly different when they talk about what nationalism actually means. But when you look at the nations where nationalism has existed, where they have been nationalist nation, like a National Socialist, right? That's famous one, right? Or you have Christian nationalist nations such as apartheid South Africa, or when you have like Japanese nationalism and how that translated into Imperial Japan and things like that. It seems to me that, like, despite any safeguards or kind of like rules of the road, it tends to lean, when put into practice, into basically my tribe good, your tribe bad.
Yeah, you're talking about the racial nationalism, a highly collectivistic racial nationalism that has heavy helpings of also jingoism too as well. Civic nationalism, or radical civic nationalism, it puts the interests of the nation and its peoples first, but it's also not xenophobic. It's not jingoistic. We can learn from other countries policies that work. It's also very pragmatic too as well. It's not dogmatic like the extremes of sort of free market fundamentalism. It's not obviously fascist or national socialist. I mean, you read my writings. I wrote a whole paper saying why I oppose fascism and national socialism. This is a nationalism, and varying nationalists, even some of the MAGA people before MAGA just went to shit, pardon my language. they viewed it in very multiracial terms. This is something that's not racially exclusive. I'll give you an example. My girlfriend, been with her 4 years.
Okay.
She's from Peru, first generation immigrant. She's like, Nevin, we're going to hang out the flag out of my house. We live in separate places. Like, yeah, absolutely. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's that? First generation immigrant. Her heart is in the country. She built herself up. She's loyal to the country, yet she's a first generation immigrant, and she's most certainly not white like you and I, quite the opposite.
Fair
So
enough.
that's a granular example. I could throw all kinds of academic stuff. I mean, Steve Bannon, who since 2016, 2017, I grew immensely disappointed with. He has talked about this. Trump, before he moved into this extreme jingoistic Reaganite thing, he talked about that back in the 1990s and 2000s. For those MAGA folks out there who are listening, it's more of an inclusive nationalism. And if you want, I could go on and on, but let you respond.
Yeah, those just seems like inclusive nationalism seems like kind of an oxymoron, and not to push back too hard, but I just like
That's
all
fine.
these people you mentioned, Steve Bannon, Trump, you say, well, before when they were reasonable, but then they inevitably slid into this jingoistic type of thing. Like nationalism, again, like...
Not to interrupt, let me throw out one person who is
Sure.
good, actually, who's one of my political heroes. Michael Lind. I don't know if you're familiar with
I'm
him.
not too familiar. Can you explain
is
for my audience,
really-
please? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Michael Lind, I'm sorry to interrupt. Michael Lind is a better example. He is an individual, used to be a Reagan Republican and moved over towards this sort of radical centrist nationalism, civic nationalism, which is rooted in the American School of Economics from, Teddy Roosevelt and whatnot, where people immigrate, you have the melting pot assimilation, a very rational strategic economic nationalism, and things of that nature. You have a midpoint between laissez-faire capitalism, Reaganomics, neoliberalism, and the other side, communism and fascism and whatnot. What I'm thinking of is a mid-20th century American model combined with a country with certain moderately center-left progressive norms that's inclusive of everybody. What I'm trying to do is create a somewhat new ideology in a world of stupid polarization.
That goal, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Again, the hang-up's going to be calling it nationalism, because I wouldn't characterize mid 20th century America as a nationalist country in any way, shape, or form. I understand that there were some people in it with nationalistic leanings, but nationalism in and of itself is anti-individual. It is anti-inclusive. It is literally setting our nation comes first, and anyone who is not considered a citizen or part of our nation, it comes far, far distant second. And I think also, it just the term just seems to muddy the waters, and it does raises some red flags with me. Like, okay, I've heard this song and dance before, right? Like, I've heard people, again, the people you mentioned say, oh, we don't want exclusivity. We don't want to kind of push anyone away, but it always ends up being that's what inevitably happens. So how married are you to the term nationalism here? Because I think we could probably break a lot of bread on individual policies, right? Like if you let's start there then. Can you give me what is a policy that you think would be great to implement or that you advocate for in the modern day? Something legislative or something, even just something more cultural that we should strive for?
Yeah, I'm more of an economic and national security guy.
Okay.
When it comes to policy-wise, I'm for a very strong national defense. I think we have to protect ourselves, and this is my nationalist side. I think of a nationalism as you're a father and mother protecting the family against those who want to subvert and against it. When I
Okay.
think patriotism, I think of the shallow, just waving the flag. Look, I have flags. I know you have a flag. See, I got two of these
Yeah.
flags here.
Cool.
Okay. But the thing is you have to feel it. You have to legislate in the public interest, in the national interest and national security. People like, I forget his first name. It's in my first essay, What is Radical Civic National? I think it's Nationalism on my Substack. Mike Lofgren, who used to be a Republican policy aide, I forget which congressman, and he talked about how American politics has become a spectator sport, how you have clowns on radio, a debased industrial sector in the United States that harms our security. We have to get away from this sort of Ayn Rand, Milton Friedman hyper-individualism and move more towards legislation in the public interest. So what I would advocate for is a strong national defense.
Okay.
I would, for our part, if you want to call it party or new elite, I don't care if you're LGBTQ, my daughter is, I embrace her and love her. I don't care if you're Black, Hispanic, white, rich, poor. If you have this ethic of public interest and legislating in the public interest and the national interest combined with looking at what actually works and what doesn't work, that's how we can move forward. I'm for what I term balanced and national capitalism. Now, is it autarky? No nation is autarkic and really has been in modern history. Even the ones that claim they're autarkic, they have trade. Now, we can talk about the trade thing. I think the tariff thing, I think you and I, because I followed your program, will have some disagreement with. But I am for a strategic economic policy. That's part of my balance of national capitalism, production, as opposed to the extreme forms of financialization, very centrist social views. I reject the culture wars because both sides use it to divide the people. I'm very strong against plutocracy ruled by the wealthy. Wealthy people should have a seat at the table. Well, what's happened is they've hogged all the seats of the table called American politics. So one thing that comes out is political and social balance. It's very important. Class polarization is a huge problem, not only from my sense of morals, which my nationalism is very empathetic. I think that comes across in my writings to some degree, especially for the lower and middle classes and the working class, the poor people. But what concerns me, and I know you've mentioned this and you deserve credit, Wick, there's a concern of mine where groups like the PSL, the DSA, anti-capitalism is growing. I've talked to fascists who purchased some of my books on National Socialism, not that it's sympathetic, and communists. One of my close friends was a defector from the Party of Communists USA. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. And they all have the same thing. I asked them very simply, why do you join? And it's the same thing. When you look at articles and research on why, Danny Haiphong, total hardcore communist, Workers' World Party, collaborator with China. You've seen his podcast. He outlines in one interview why he did that. It's being wrought by financialization, union busting, how it's affected real people. And I've dated people from totalitarian countries. I work with analysts like J.R. Nyquist, who are close to defectors from totalitarian countries. And the people are wonderful. But when you meet these people, it seems like, there's no disrespect, they suffer from PTSD. They are scarred. They're wonderful people, but it's breathtaking. You don't want to be governed by these people. So I would argue that Hayek's road to serfdom is not through the growth of the quote welfare state or quote big government. It's actually through neoliberalism, financialization, and economic globalization and union busting. We could talk about the trade issue at some point. I know that's a big issue of yours, it's a big issue of mine. But I appreciate you letting me the opportunity to speak at length.
Take your time, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to kind of go with. My concern again, it's one of those things where and forgive the comparison. I know it's not entirely fair, but it's probably the best I can give, without more kind of like thought into it. But there's a lot of socialists I talk to, a lot of communists I talk to, who will lay out a grand system of ideas. Econoboy, we've both talked to him. Grand system of ideas. But then when I try to drill down on like, okay, how do we get from there to here? And what does that look like at the end state? Like, what does your ideal system look like in practice? I don't know. It's hard for me to get past the failures of the past on these things. So like, again, nationalism as an idea, I feel fundamentally, right, puts the individual below the state. And I don't think that should be something that we should be aspiring to. One of the best parts of America is that we enshrine individual liberties, right? Liberalism does this. It enshrines individual liberties that I have the right. If I don't want to deal with my nation at all, right? If I just want to hang out in the woods and do my own thing and just live my life and not contribute, I'm not forced to, beside taxes and some other very basic things, right? But when we talk about civic nationalism, right? Radical civic nationalism, what precisely are you asking from me? Like if you got your way, if you were king or president or whatever, what would the average citizen be expected to do?
Really, the average citizen, pay your taxes, be a law-abiding citizen, but it's more going to be a check on elites. I'm going to throw out a bunch of policies and laws that I'd like to restore. For example, I would like to have an industrial policy. This would involve things like tuition-free education for certain majors in medicine, science, engineering, trades, to reindustrialize the country. I would like to resurrect the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, or in good Alexander Hamilton style, create the third national bank out of the Federal Reserve that would basically inject low interest or no interest loans or credits into the economy. That's rooted in American history. I would like to restore Glass-Steagall, something which even Alan Greenspan and Christopher Cox, who was an advocate of deregulation, said they fucked up and made a mistake with the whole financial deregulation. I would get rid of private equity, and they would do this over, not like one shot. You would wean it off. It's like a drug patient. You got to reintroduce this on a slow part. It's one of the things Trump is fucking up with the tariffs, pardon my language. He's just doing it 0 to 60. That's not my approach, because the economy is a delicate organism. I would also get rid of right to work laws too as well. And this is going to take a heavy lift. That's why I'm doing this podcast and show, to get these ideas out there, to start spreading seeds. I, as one person, can't make all of this happen. I would gradually have, it's probably going to take at least a decade or so, wean ourselves off of trade with China, because China is a threat to the, quote, liberal order and to the United States of America. Russia, I said this about 10 years ago, but Russia, by and large, we have minimal trade with Russia. I think the last statistic says that's a couple of $2 billion at most. What else would I do? When it comes to national defense, I would keep strategic purity or superiority to Russia and China. When it comes to strategic nuclear weapons, I would put in missile defense. I would also back our allies, while also holding them accountable too as well. I mean, I outlined this in my What is Radical Civic Nationalism paper. I would also do a lifetime ban on lobbying by former politicians, by generals, admirals, colonels, whatnot. Once they leave office, you can't lobby. There's no reason for that. I would do a foreign lobbying ban for people who were in office. You leave office, you don't lobby on behalf of a foreign country. When it comes to trade, I would do incremental tariffs, along with a number of other industrial policies that I would
Can I ask again, I don't mean to cut you off, but like
No, go ahead.
you're going policy by policy by policy, and
policies.
I want to talk about them, right?
Yeah, go
let's
ahead.
let's start with the one you just mentioned, like implement tariffs at a slow rate. Yeah, just cards on the table. I think when we talk about what's in our national interest, I think that it is in our national interest to allow a nation to allow its citizens to make business deals and trade and exchange goods with minimal oversight or minimal regulations, aside from maybe strategic interests like steel for ships and things like that, right? I can see exceptions being made for like those electronic chips. I don't know what they're called. Those things. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like for
there are different kinds of chips. There's microchips or microprocessors.
Exactly, the ones we need in our electronics to run, just the day-to-day
our weapon
stuff.
system, which we've exported quite a bit of that, including the rare earth metal.
I can see targeted, specific tariffs for that. I'm not a tariff absolutionist, right, or absolutist in this case.
Nor am I.
And anti-tariff absolutist, but I think that tariffs in general do stymie our freedom to have an exchange of goods with a global system. And I don't think we can put globalism's here to stay, like it or not. The cat's out of the bag. Globalism has made us, I think, a very wealthy nation, even me, right, who doesn't have any kind of like corporate interests and things. Like, I am able to get so much stuff, right, and I am able to have so many options because of globalism at really cheap prices. And sure, there are downsides to this, but I think that going back and trying to regress to a world where we are cutting off trade with even China, I don't know if I'm okay with that. Like, I understand, again, if you want to do like specific national interest things, right? Like strategic defense interest things. But why could, if I wanted to buy something from China, why would you restrict my ability to do so, or why would you make it harder?
Adversary of the United States, and China operates by a Marxist-Leninist point of view, and with cutting off aid. They did that, for example, China, Japan. This was a few years ago. Japan pissed off China for some reason or another, and Chinese cut off important rare earth shipments to the Japanese. We saw what happened with COVID, with our lack of production of the PPE and other medical equipment. I mean, there are so many strategic sectors that have been exported to not only friendly and neutral countries, which also are governed by their own national interests. And we can talk about some granular history in a moment where sometimes that's bit us in the ass. But you look at China, they have engaged in not only predatory trade practices and whatnot with the purpose of destroying our industry. And that's an old communist tactic. The Soviets tried that during the Great Depression when Amtor, which is a Soviet American trading company, dumped products into Western European and American markets purposely to create unemployment. And China, I mean, I've written extensively about it. I'm not going to ramble on and on. You guys can check out my Substack. I've written in nauseating detail on why trade with China is not in the interest. And I will say, and I remember this, I'm just turned 51 years old, and I remember following the debates on PNTR for China, for those in the audience that don't know permanent normal trade relations. They said, oh my God, I remember the debates on C-SPAN, like, oh, we got to have this. We're going to have an export surplus in our trade deficit with China, which we had since 1983. It's going to be a surplus and it's going to be wonderful and everything. And you know what? It really wasn't. And even Clinton's lead negotiator, Mr. Cassidy, even admitted in 2008 that it was a failure and it was basically a ruse by multinational corporations to outsource jobs, and that has debased the tax base. I mean, I'm from Long Island, New York, and outsourcing has harmed New York, the greater New York City area. It has hollowed out industries and whatnot, never to return, including towns and everything else. And then we were told, I remember this, oh, you just go to college and you'll get those higher paying jobs. And now we'll look where those jobs are not even available. And you have companies, even in this wonderful Trump economy, that's laying off people too as well. Now, look, there is a big grain of truth in trade and somewhat free trade. Countries like South Korea and Japan produce excellent cars. There's no doubt about it. You and I are not going to, nobody's going to disagree with that. And you're going to, I am for trade with countries that are neutral or free based on competing, based on product quality. The other thing is when you look at the details of the history of how Taiwan, Germany, Japan, South Korea, all built up their industries, it was not through free trade and free markets. Now, I am more liberal compared to those systems, meaning classically liberal by comparison, when it comes to economics. But they used all manner of non-tariff barriers. They used state-owned enterprises. They used currency manipulation, undervaluing their currency, and all these other things, slave labor in the case of China, as well as some of our allied countries. You know, Mexico for years, decades, they had the maquiladoras. They had the peso devaluations in 1982, which encouraged even more outsourcing to Mexico. So when I look at that, it's deeply problematic. I'm for trade based on product quality, not trade with geopolitical adversaries. It's not made China kinder or gentler. We gave Vladimir Putin, who you and I are more or less on the same page, and I commend you for standing firm in some recent debates on that. Vladimir Putin was given permanent normal trade relations. I wrote a paper for Accuracy in Media, which exposed that and how conservatives were supportive of that. Why? Oh, we got to get over, the Cold War is over and Russia's our friend. And if we trade with Russia, we're going to have a surplus and we're going to moderate Putin and everything else. And yeah, we know he's a bad guy, but, you know, we got to trade with him.
Yeah, the Russian reset has been tried since the fall of the Soviet Union, frankly, and it just hasn't worked. Bush tried it, didn't work. Obama tried it, didn't work. Trump tried it, didn't work. It's just, it does not, Putin does not want to be our ally in any real sense of the word, right? And I agree with you with that. And and again, like, I am not against certain governmental interventions in the market, such as sanctions is a good one, right? Like if we want to punish a nation for, or try to exert our pressure on them because in times of extremis, fair, okay? But my worry when you say like it's going to, like, we should judge this on product quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I don't think that's how it's actually going to work in practice. What I see in practice is what Trump did, basically. And what other presidents have done is when they apply tariffs, the first thing people do once tariffs get applied are companies go and they try to get an exemption. And then the government picks winners or losers in these exemptions, and it's a disaster. And, and while theoretically perhaps there could be, like, again, I do think we should need to rebuild our industrial base, right? Our manufacturing base. I think we can do that, but I don't think tariffs are the way to do that. I would go with things like subsidies and
Don't get me started. Yeah, I'm singing your song because, and I don't mean to be rude to you by interrupting. There's part of the problem, Rick, is the tariffs, or you could use a VAT. One of my guests, Dr. Pat Choate, who's an economist, he's really good. He calls for the WTO compatible VAT, or a value added tax, which most countries do have. But the bigger issue, and I've learned this through research and getting into the details, a lot of it has to do with the corporate investment. These tax cuts, like the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, the 1986 tax cut, the George W. Bush tax cut, 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. What had happened? It's a documented fact. I go over it in my papers, where instead of paying workers more or opening factories. Much of it is put in stock buybacks, which I know Destiny loves those, the podcaster Destiny, to those who don't know. But a lot of that is not productive investment. There was a reason why stock buybacks were made illegal and then re-legalized by that great Democrat, Ronald Reagan, in 1982. That's a big problem. A lot of it is also not only a trade problem, but it's also an investment problem. And you do need to have subsidies too as well. Tariffs are a tip of the tentacle. The problem with Trump, one of the many problems with Trump, is he's going 0 to 60. There's no strategic deliberation on development of industrial policy. Because if he was smart, he would do a gradual tariff increase or a gradual introduction of the VAT, and he would also, and he could do this without Congress, because Reagan did it without Congress under his SEC chair, John Shad, Wall Street banker, by getting rid of, I think it's the safe harbor clause of stock buybacks, where the companies, those who don't know in the audience, they just buy back their stock and it boosts the stock price. Why? Because we've been heavily propagandized that the only responsibility of a company, so Milton Friedman and Mr. Jensen and Theodore Levitt saying the only responsibility of a company is their shareholders. It wasn't like that. I think you and I remember that when that was starting to come online. So it's a larger problem, and these issues need to be addressed. They need to roll back these deregulations, even with stock buybacks. I would do that in more than a year period, because you have to give businesses time to adjust. Now, you're probably saying, well, Nevin, you're not a nationalist. Why the hell are you calling yourself that? Because I'm thinking of the national interest. I'm thinking of like a parent.
Not to be rude.
Go ahead.
And interrupt myself.
You can interrupt me.
But this is the same. Anyways. This is the same problem I have a lot of people who call themselves socialists, but they're not socialists when you look into it, and it launders the term. I think we need to make nationalist into something that people recoil from as a term, because nationalism does end in blood and tears throughout history. And so I understand, right? And maybe we're looping a little bit, but I think it's important to mention.
It's a good discussion,
right? Calling yourself a nationalist while not actually being a nationalist, as you just said, you're just using the term to kind of bring in other thoughts and other like parental kind of feels and things. It launders people who also call themselves nationalist, but are the more, for lack of a better term, traditional nationalists, right? The ones who are like, yeah, I think America is great, and you know what? This other party is not real Americans, and so we need to deal with them. Have you seen a lot of the discourse that has propped up around what is called heritage Americans?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. In fact, I did a post on Twitter. I encourage people to follow me where, Ro Khanna, who is actually a good congressman, particularly on the economics. You're familiar with him, I'm sure.
I know who he is, yes.
I'm sorry?
I know who he is, yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I figured as much. And they some asshole, for the lack of a better term, slighted him and saying, you're the last person who should identify as a Pennsylvanian when addressing Pennsylvanians, basically by implication that because he's non-white and doesn't look like the quote American, therefore his opinion doesn't count. Ro Khanna, as I repost on my Twitter, there are plenty of heritage Americans that have screwed over this country because they have put profit over patriotism or national interest. And this is, you see, when I think of civic nationalism, however imperfect, I think, yes, they were men of their time. And I had my disagreements with some of their imperialist type policies or colonialist policies at time. But I think of Teddy Roosevelt. I think of Abraham Lincoln. I think of George Washington. There are aspects of Franklin Roosevelt. Yes, there are conservatives on the anti-communism that I identify with, but I'm no longer a staunch conservative. I am something
And
else.
unfortunately, most people are no longer conservative in this country, and I think it's hurt our country. But that's another topic almost. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I like conservative goals as I understand it. The problem is the way it's been configured for the past 40 years. But we can go over that later.
Sure,
We
sure.
can do a
That's
different show. I'm
another
happy to,
topic. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, you're good. So you look there. The problem is we're taught to think that nationalism, like World War One, like the 1800, well, World War One, because you had the Serbian
Yeah,
nationalists.
nationalism as a concept didn't really kind of come until like the late, I would say, 1800s, 18th century, kind of after the French Revolution, basically, is when you kind of got the seeds of nationalism. Like the French Revolution was kind of nationalist in a way, but you know what I mean, and it's kind of spread from there. But now I see what you're saying. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. It's not this belligerent type of nationalism uh, compared to what I view as totalitarian nationalists of the fascist and national socialist types. You mentioned South Africa, the Nationalist Party, and whatnot. I don't identify with them because they're extremely authoritarian. And I
Yeah.
think when you exercise scientific control over the American population, I mean, this is why I'm leveraging
Hold on.
my
What do you mean scientific control?
where basically you use technology, block committees, cameras, rationing, thought control, and everything. Those were what those societies use. I am not interested in that.
Mm.
One of the biggest purposes of my project is precisely protect America from from becoming a reality. And I know people might think, oh, Nevin, you're alarmist. Well, 200,000 people, 200,000 Bolsheviks took over a Russia of 91 million people. National Socialist Germany was or Weimar Germany, even the Kaiser's Germany, was well integrated. Jews, and I'm a Jew, okay? Yes, I'm one of those people.
Okay.
Double parentheses, whatever, it is. Yes, we were integrated. We fought and died. Jewish people fought and died for Germany during World War One. There were Germans who were nationalists, part of the DNVP, as well as the breakaway from the DNVP. That was the extreme nationalist party at the time that was, by European standards, conservative.
Certainly, I don't disagree that individual nationalists can be even good people doing things for very well-intended purposes. The problem with nationalism, right, is that it, again, I think its fundamental sin is the suppression of the individual, or the subordination, I should say, of the individual and the family, and the church, everything else, to the state. The state is the pinnacle.
And that's not me, and that's not the American nationalism and the figures that I have stated.
I just disagree. Fair enough. Go ahead. I don't want to circle again.
It really is not. I get it. I get where you're coming from. I get your trepidation. I think Trump also has damaged the credibility of all kinds of nationalism, including mine, in a myriad of ways. And I was a Trump supporter, and I wrote essays on why I immediately started to oppose Trump in 2017. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I mean, you could find that in my essays. And now I'm a staunch opponent of his administration. So I get what you're saying. I think people I get what we learn in school. What I was going to say about Germany, it was the austerity. Mark Blythe, who is a Rhode Island political economist, he talks about how austerity and massive cutbacks helped bring the Nazi party to power. It's all of these issues of these ideologies of neoliberalism, which is really what modern conservatism is about, is a very anti-nationalist ideology. It's very much, let's trade with our enemies. It's market hedonism. Do whatever you want, irrespective of the consequences of the actions. Because in our society, the elites, the economic elites, by virtue of their wealth, they are conferred tremendous access by their wealth. Our culture has reinforced that, and that has harmed the national interest. And a lot of that is when I see the growing inequality that's happening, you need a referee to come into play here, because I'm stating historical examples where this has happened in societies that seem to be strong, that had large armies, supposedly large economies. In case of Weimar, Germany was tolerant and integrated and culturally very liberal and all the rest of it. So I'm concerned. And when and Connor have mentioned the concern of the communist threat, you guys are right. And I appreciate that.
Here's the thing. Like, I don't necessarily disagree with you that the overwhelming influence and power held by the few that is being used to suppress the many is a problem. It is something that we need to deal with. What I think we disagree about, and again, this is going to take more than one discussion to kind of hash out. This isn't something that, like, I can't pretend to know your entire ideology in one conversation, right? Like, even one Substack article. I can't pretend that I can accurately kind of just peg it and put it like in one bit, like pigeonhole it and then say, I'm good, I know the full extent of it. But
That's an excellent comment.
Yeah,
excellent.
But where I, at least at first blush, seem to disagree with you and strongly disagree with you is that nationalism, civic nationalism, radical civic nationalism, as you call it, is the solution that we should use. I would point to these, the historical examples you gave, and I would point to the countries who did dabble in nationalism and went whole hog in nationalism to fix those problems that you mentioned that they had. It didn't make it better. It made it worse. And so there has to be a different way. There has to be another way. There has to be a third solution, if you will, other than that.
And I get what you're saying, because I don't support all nationalisms. I mean, it's like capitalism. It's like so-called socialism and everything. There's so many different flavors. I'll give you another example. World War II. We were fighting against National Socialism, fascism, totalitarian nationalism. Our people, through nationalist efforts, had to come together. And as a result of economic nationalism combined with certain regulations, as well as also free enterprise, we had the industrial base to prosecute a war against Germany, Italy, and Japan that had tremendous industrial bases. So that's my thing. You know, and I'm going to challenge.
Hold on. The industrial base, for example, one of the ways when, again, I'm not a historian. Forgive me if I get this wrong.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. In order to prosecute the war, FDR had to lift a lot of the nationalist policies because they were choking our economy, and he had to lift a lot of these things in order for us to kind of go whole hog. He had to go less economically nationalist in order to do that. Again, I could be wrong. I didn't really prepare for the FDR discussion today, right? But I've had these discussions in the past, and I do remember reading that. Again, please, grain of salt. Look, dear viewer, if you're watching this, never just believe what streamers say. Do your own research, double check. But I'm pretty sure I'm correct here. I think I am. Yeah, it's like, I think that coming together as a country, that act isn't necessarily nationalist. I think there's a good quote, and I want to read this quote to you from George Orwell. Okay. And again, the division between patriotism and nationalism is fraught. There is overlap, but I think he describes it best with this quote. And I'm quoting now, nationalism is not to be confused with patriotism. Both words are normally used in so vague a way that any definition is liable to be challenged, but one must draw a distinction between them, since two different and even opposing ideas are involved. By patriotism, I mean devotion to a particular place in a particular way of life, which one believes to be the best in the world, but has no wish to force on other people. Patriotism is of its nature defensive, both militarily and culturally. Nationalism, on the other hand, is inseparable from the desire of power. The abiding purpose of every nationalist is to secure more power and more prestige, not for himself, but for the nation or other unit in which he has chosen to sink his own individuality. So in other words, patriotism is this love of country. We're America. We're rah, rah, rah. Let's do it. Let's get everything that's good for us and we'll build up ourselves and we'll be great, right? While nationalism is love of country combined with the dislike of other countries, peoples, tribes, cultures, right? Saying we're better than you as opposed to we're great. Does that make sense? And
No,
again, George Orwell, right?
Orwell was writing at the time. Orwell is one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
1984 is actually a foundational book of mine. With that stated, he's writing from the time period of World War II, as the audience knows, died in 1950. So he's looking at nationalism as from Germany, Italy, and Japan, the Axis powers. And he's a man of his time. He's writing from that position. With civic nationalism, when you look it up, is not necessarily, it's usually not about, well, my country is better than yours. And that's it. And screw you and screw everybody else. It's not jingoistic and xenophobic. If you look at what actual National Socialists, Christian nationalists say on X, they think we're civic nationalists like me are a bunch of pussies and rape mixers. Excuse the verbiage here, but I got to be a little entertaining and not dry.
You're fine.
Dry and academic. That's what they think of us. Just, see for yourself. A couple of other points that you made. First of all, I would love to have other discussions with you, because when you look at a lot of my views, as I hope you're getting the sense, it's very nuanced. It's not. It's informed.
Right. Frankly, I just don't think you're an actual nationalist. I'm going to be real with you. I think you call yourself a nationalist, but you're not. Right? You're something else.
And there are people, and I want to pick your brain about that, because I'm just curious. Look, the term nationalism gets people in trouble. I know when Pat Buchanan was writing his book, The Great Betrayal, which is book in 1998 on free trade, he used to be a free trader and then turned around. And when Russell Kirk, who you probably know who he is for the audience, Russell Kirk was a well-known conservative philosopher and political scientist, and Russell Kirk and Pat Buchanan, agreed on the trade issue. And Russell Kirk is like, Pat, don't call it economic nationalism, call it economic patriotism, because you're going to turn a lot of people off. So I understand what you're saying. When I think of patriotism, I just think, as I said earlier, what a lot of people think patriotism, this unthinking, rah, 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 my country, right or wrong, whatever. So I have to find a different term. And I think in nationalism, it's a love of country where the elite of the country are putting it truly first. Given the reality of the country's demographics, the world's makeup, and the practical world of politics, does that mean you just totally isolate yourself? Day one, jack up tariffs to 110%? Obviously not. I'm pragmatic. And when you look at my writings and you hear my other podcasts, you peel that onion, you're going to find different layers with that.
Sure.
But I'm going to throw this at you.
Throw it at me. Let's see if we can catch it. Yeah.
I'm going to throw it at you. So, number one, you're a seasoned political commentator.
I don't know about seasoned, right? You call me old? What's going on?
You've been on a while. You're a smart guy.
Sure.
Number one, where do you think I am politically based on what you've read, what I've said? Two, what would you label me then if you feel I'm not a nationalist?
I think that you are probably a protectionist, probably right of center, but also a never Trumper. I don't think there's a specific label for you that I could easily attach, right? Because you are, as we've talked, you do have nuanced views and things like that, but I think you'd be generally anti-free trade, generally anti-intervention in most cases. That's the impression I get. But I just met you, so I'm withholding judgment. Right? Like I am more than willing to have my first blush be wrong.
Yeah, partially right. I am anti-free trade as it's been configured for the past 40 years, but I'm also not for we should just be totally
Oh
isolationist
yeah,
or
I'm not talking isolate. Like
yeah.
anti-interventionism is different
Yeah.
from
When it comes to
isolationism. But
anti-intervention, I think we got to rebuild our layers of power, and I think we also have to, and it's a very ambitious goal to curb the alienation and demoralization of a lot of even younger Americans in order to really be an assertive power. It's a complicated issue. I think we need to back allies like Ukraine, Taiwan, South Korea,
when you
and
say
not.
back them, how? Back them how? Like, would
Um,
you, if China today crossed our red line, right? So they sent troops into Taiwan to forcibly reintegrate them, or to kind of basically take it over, right?
and now you're going to bring out my concerns. Go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Yep.
Should the U.S. militarily intervene and stop them from doing that? Whether that be sending planes, air support, putting up a no-fly zone, whether it be boots on the ground, whether it be a blockade where we kind of take
It's going
our
to be one
carrier
of the
groups
worst
and set them
decisions.
right there and say, and say don't
It's
cross, right? Like,
Yeah, my concern, and this is
mm,
echoed by generals, by admirals, defense specialists since the 1980s. My concern is are we going to be capable of sustaining a protracted war with China? Number one, do we have the industrial capability to fight against China? Number two, China has also war plans against the United States.
of course I do.
They do. And not a lot of people like to talk about that. I write about it. I wrote a paper called the Ultimate Domino, which talks about the Red Dawn scenario against the United States, one of the foundational movies of my thinking. And people laugh, you think I'm crazy, but you have to dig, but you'll find the information on war plans that they had
Well,
against.
just to let you know some of my background, I used to work in the military. I was a cryptolinguist for the Air
Oh,
Force,
wow.
and my target language was Mandarin Chinese. So I'm aware.
Okay, so you know.
I'm aware. Yeah.
So I'm scared shitless. And one of the things, the worst decisions a senator, a congressman, a president, secretary of defense has to make is to put people that you don't know in the line of battle and for the potentiality where victory might not be attainable, even worse. Part of me says we have to back Taiwan because their ultimate domino is the United States. And if you want me to elaborate on specific defectors like Stanislav Lunev, who Jeff Nyquist, who's been on my show a number of times, personally knew, and others, I can go into chapter and verse on that because people need to hear it. With that stated, we do have a lot of strengths here in the United States. World's biggest Navy, the technology, cutting edge technology and whatnot. So I don't want to think we're just totally weak and helpless. But we do have a security obligation to back Taiwan. How I would do that, I don't know. That's why I would
fair.
have.
Like, you're not a look. Neither of us know the full extent
That's
of
why
the
I want.
information we wouldn't have to. But what I asked you for is to kind of get what you generally would lean towards if we had the capability. The
If
question
we
I'm
have the
asking, assuming
capability,
that we can at least, it might cost
yes,
us. It might be a heavy price, but
yes,
if we wanted to, we could intervene and say
yeah.
no.
And as long as average Americans, were protected by a revamped civil defense and a missile defense, the THAAD systems, I think it's called the GMD systems and others, where we expand that. I want our people to be protected. But I would intervene in Taiwan because the domino theory was real. And that's
Would
the end of the
you
story.
Sure. Would you allow in so when you talk about like nationalism in your view, um let's talk immigration. What
We hate them all.
say what more?
I hate them all.
You hate all
Throw
the
'em out.
immigrants, every single one?
Dude, go on my Facebook. I'm in a 4-year relationship with an immigrant.
Okay, sure, but that doesn't. Okay, just because you're dating one, okay, and she's one of the good ones, doesn't mean I know your position on immigration.
I know.
What is your position on asylum seekers, people who come to this country seeking asylum from various war-torn areas around the globe and just come to our border and apply for asylum? Do you like
issue.
Trump's approach to this, or are you more of a Biden approach guy, or do you hate them both?
No. I'm not. Well, first of all, I don't even know which direction to come from this with immigration, because there are many. There's economic, there's national security, whatnot. Civic nationalists are not typically like MAGA as it's currently configured right now. I mean, what is going on right now, where you have ICE allegedly outside what's the name of the offices? The USCIS offices, where people are trying to get their green cards, their citizenships, and do it correctly. Let's be honest with each other. That's fucked up.
It is.
Because you want these people to be loyal. You want them to talk to their relatives. Hey, Dio, America's a great country. We're being successful. We're treated well. We're hospitable. I mean, really, the other thing that's deeply upsetting about the Trump administration, I live in Florida. We're ground zero for migrant, undocumented, as well as documented virtual slave labor by employers. If you notice, they are not going after employers who exploit and treat immigrants, often through labor contractors. There's a lot of documentation on this. Look up the history of Immokalee, for example, in Florida. I don't know if you're familiar with Florida or not, but yeah. So that not only does that undercut American workers, but that also exploits immigrant workers. And that's wrong. So I would look in agriculture, for example, either they're paying higher wages or mechanization of production, or you pay the workers, the guest workers who.
What's your stance on I'm not cutting you off to be rude. I'm just cutting off because I now understand that portion, but I do want to kind of broaden it out. H-1B visas.
Opposed to it.
You're opposed. Why?
Because they are used to undercut American workers. There have been leaked videos by law firms admitting that we don't bother to hire American workers, to really take the time to hire the American workers the way for those of you in the audience might not know, in my audience and whatnot, H-1Bs were created in 1990 to fill worker shortages and whatnot in critical areas where we weren't educating people or deficient in education and whatnot. So we figured we would do that. But again, really and truly, there was no effort made by companies to, generally speaking, to hire Americans. You could underpay the H-1B visa worker if they complained about poor working conditions, lower wages. This is also true with the H-2 visa workers. You're thrown the hell out of the country. You're sorry, but gone, goodbye. And if you're undocumented, it's even worse. So I'm against that. What I would like to see is a revamped education program where we're educating our own people. Now, what do I think of immigration in general? It has its problems and challenges like anything else. It also has its benefits too as well. I don't believe in open borders. I don't believe in closing our borders totally and indefinitely. I'm open, yes, to a degree, to moratoriums, to border protections, electronic fences. We also have the issue of visa overstays. You also have the issue, and I know this personally, not for me, but for people I know, who there are not enough immigration judges to naturalize these people. And also, let's talk about the immigration lawyers. Portions of them are shysters. I had an ex who, when I was seeing her, she was basically thousands of dollars of her hard-earned money were stolen by an immigration lawyer that didn't do jack shit, that just screwed her over. So when you look at immigration, It's a complicated issue. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the lived experience. How do we get these Americans integrated into American society? I'm not saying they should throw their cultures out, because I enjoy different cultures too. That would be hypocritical. I'd be lying to you, your audience, and my audience. I would basically network them through programs through the Department of Labor in cooperation with the states and locals for free English language classes, to set them up with living wage jobs so they're self-supporting and all the rest of it. On the national security front, there were H-1B workers, you probably know this, Wick, who were double agents for the Chinese intelligence.
Yes, but that's
is that the majority? No, but that's why you need to have
that's true with any kind of immigration system we have.
Correct.
Or even none. If they could not send agents to us, they would generate through bribery, extortion, etc. Right, and other
which
things.
they do anyway.
Well, yeah, citizens within our country. I don't know if you heard. It's funny how many veterans, or not veterans, I guess you'd say, but active duty military members get basically scammed by foreign women, Chinese women who are talking to them online, who they get tricked into sending classified intel to, and then they get arrested, thrown in jail. There's a few stories, and it's funny because you think, ha ha ha, this guy got scammed, and it was some Chinese honeypot or whatever, right? But it's also like, this is who's handling our classified intel, and this is how porous, right, our security is. That's a real problem. But I want to talk a little bit, right, like this. I think that we have here another fundamental kind of overall difference. I'm blanking on the word for this right now, right? But this like fundamental like ideal difference here. When I look at H-1B visas, I think it is in our national interest, not just in our economic interest, like for the big corporations and things, but in our national interest to bring people through the H-1B visa program to America who do meet these qualifications, because H-1B visas in a lot of cases are highly technical jobs. I want those people to become American, right? I want them to be American. And I think that, well, I know a couple people. I have a couple in my audience who are on H-1B visas working in America.
By the way, I'm not angry at them. By the way, the average H-1B visa.
I understand. Like, I'm not accusing you of that, right?
Yeah. But I just want to make it clear.
Sure. I'm just kind of giving why I disagree with you on this, right? And kind of laying out my argument, and the reason I'm making my argument is because I think that while, yes, I do want the average American to have access to jobs that are high paying, that are highly skilled in things, there are many cases where we just don't have enough people qualified. And yes, we can train them, but that takes time. That takes, in many cases, years. And I think that it's a good brain drain is good if you're the one that's draining the brains of the other countries, right? Like, we are bringing the best and the brightest. We're bringing a lot of doctors and things like that come from other countries. Some of them go back to their own country, but that helps us too, I would argue, through the spread of our culture, the spread of our ideals, the spread, like, they come, they get a taste of freedom, and theoretically, right, they kind of like help the liberalism in their own country go higher. In practice, it has its problems, right? But like, I think that bringing people to our country that are the best and the brightest, and giving them a path to citizenship so that they can become American is great. I do believe in what is called a propositional nation, okay, right? Like a nation founded on kind of like the Reaganite ideals, the city on the hill, right, that everyone comes to. We are a nation of ideals and ideas. And I reject wholly this idea of, well, Joe Schmo down the street who was born here, sure, but hates America, who hates everything we stand for. I don't think he's more American than a guy on a student visa who comes to this country, who loves this country, who's looking to be a citizen one day, who's having to work for that privilege, and who believes in us. I think that when they become a citizen, they are just as American, if not more, than the guy who is just happened to be born here.
Well, that last part of your statement, I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I've seen that to a degree too, as well, personally. You know, one area where I do disagree with you, I understand
Go
your
ahead.
argument, definitely.
Yeah.
I've heard it before. I would rather train American citizens, whatever color or background,
Sure.
in these skills. And you're right, it's going to take time. Like revitalizing our industrial base, it's going to take time. Just as like how our industrial base, like our technical base was built, it wasn't built overnight. It was built maybe in the span of 50 to 100 years.
Yeah, it takes decades for this.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
happen.
So you're 110% right on that. Where we disagree is the goal with that. Now, concerning going back to the other countries, they'll also bring those technical skills back for the benefit of those countries' economies, including China, which doesn't wish us well. What I would like to see is immigrants coming here in a controlled fashion, like any other country, coming here and being able to take advantage of the opportunities and become American citizens, whether they're political refugees.
Would you put a moratorium then on Chinese student visas, Chinese H-1B visas, or for any country that becomes our adversary? Like, would you have restricted? Would you restrict immigrants from China from being able to apply for student visas and things?
Well, many of those Chinese, and those have been around since at least the 1970s, when Carter gave most favored nation trade status, MFN, and that's when the flood of the immigrants come, and most of them were majoring in scientific and technical skills used to go back to China to build up not only their economy, but their military industrial capabilities. So we have to be very wary of that. And there were, I mean, look, the Chinese intelligence source in, I think, Los Alamos in the 1980s that gave away secrets from our neutron bomb. I forget the name of it. I forget the name. The gentleman, something V10.
I don't know the specific.
Forgive me. It was a well-known case in the 1980s. It was really crazy. I mean, it was here on those types of programs. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Don't take it from me.
Yeah, don't listen to the streamers 100%. Don't take our word as gospel, but carry on.
You know, my memory is not always great, but the point is you do have these issues at play here. So I would restrict it. Now, to turn it off tomorrow, you're going to precipitate. This is my pragmatic side coming out. You're challenging me, and I'm pretending that I'm in the chair.
Yeah.
And I would do it in an incremental basis. You have to kind of tap dance. And what you also have to do is educate your public. You also have to say, look, China, I don't want war with you. It's not my goal. Don't fuck with us. Let us do our thing. We're not going to fuck with you then. Don't fuck with our allies and whatnot and everything else. And we, at the same time, the president educates people, weekly press conferences saying, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And other than Ronald Reagan, to some degree, on Soviet and disinformation and defense buildup issues, to some degree, he was good on public diplomacy, and FDR was amazing on public diplomacy and whatnot, or public counter-propaganda campaigns. You know, that's important. So you have to take, here's another individual who I agree with, surprisingly, is Elizabeth Warren. And you have to take what she has termed, and others, a whole of government strategy to deal with all of these challenges. And I know a lot of people don't like that necessarily, whole of government. Oh, you're a communist or a socialist. No, our adversaries think in terms of how can we exploit the pressure points in free societies, exploit the hell out of it, because they use a whole of government strategy for, I would argue, the export of totalitarianism. So that's another part too. We have to educate people.
This is one of the things I think we're going to also have a disagreement on when you talk about restricting certain kind of, because we talked about this backstage before we came on, and I want to bring it up now because I do only got like 20 minutes left. I apologize for the lateness of the hour, right? But
You're good.
I
Don't
just
worry
want to make sure that we get to everything you want to. But I do want to talk about this idea of restricting the freedoms of our citizens because we need to secure them against other countries. And specifically, I'm talking about freedom of speech online, right? And what I am allowed as an American citizen to consume, what content I want to consume. Because one of the problems with censorship is it doesn't just block the people from speaking, but it blocks the people who would like to hear what they have to say from hearing what they have to say. And I understand that there are dangers to free speech, to allowing adversarial nations to come in and have the Russia Times, right? Or other groups, right? Like look at the whole tenant media scandal, right? Things like that. And I am okay with certain like requiring a foreign entity to disclose that they're paying and who they're paying and how much they're paying. I think that's fine. I think that's fair. I think that's a good balance. But outside of that, I am very skeptical and very wary of any kind of governmental censorship or intervention within the media space to restrict anyone's voice, even like people we would consider bad dudes like Xi Jinping and things like that. But what would a radical civic nationalist's answer to the informational warfare space we have today? What would your answer be?
You got to counter the propaganda with counter propaganda. You don't necessarily restrict and say you can't necessarily circulate. Look, I mean, I'm very concerned about extremist groups, DSA, PSL, Patriot Front, and everything else. Am I for banning them and locking them all up? No. Unless they commit, obviously, during wartime treason, that's a different story. And that is a constitutional issue, too, as well. Should the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security keep an eye on them? Yes. Sit with folded arms, see what they're doing, particularly the ones if they have ties with hostile foreign powers. And I say that explicitly in my what is radical civic nationalist essay. And you also have to expose them. Counter propaganda doesn't involve censorship, involves more information, because you don't want to also on a practical level make martyrs of these individuals. And they can be very good at exploiting the situation, being made martyrs. Yes. Now, the other issues, yes, National Lawyers Guild, which was a CPUSA front, it still exists. ACLU even, they talk about cloaking themselves in patriotism and using bourgeois democratic rights to overthrow the system. Okay, that's very bad. It's very manipulative. I hate that to my core. I hate it. Neo-Nazis have done that before too. They'll say, oh, well, free speech. Oh my God, we want free speech. But yeah, you have Matthew Heimbach. I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with who he is. He's one of the founders of the Traditionalist Workers' Party, Richard Spencer, who I know is kind of like, I honestly don't trust him as far as I can throw him. They mentioned quietly in other interviews, we basically crap on free speech, and when we're in power, we're going to do that. But they have no problem using the ACLU and wrapping themselves up in the Constitution. Big corporations, through groups like the Federalist Society and others, they wrap themselves up in the Constitution. Franklin Roosevelt made a big speech about the economic royalists and how they wrap themselves up in freedom and royalism. So it's really the responsibility of a radical civic nationalism is, yes, you monitor, but you also, at the same time, yes, I believe in anti-lobbying laws, but I also believe Americans have the right to lobby. If that's what your job wants to be without being in politics, you go to law school and be a lawyer and you want to do that, that's your right. Redress of grievances in the government as well as First Amendment freedom of speech. Again, balance. But you need to have more information, counter propaganda to the public, President, Homeland Security Secretary, Secretary of Defense, sunshine in the rat holes, exposure. It's the best medicine. It's the way I was basically believe in what I believe and whatnot, and my strong stand against totalitarianism through exposure. The other thing is this is where my, if you want to call it populism or New Deal or progressivism or whatnot, we have to look and see why are people our age, Younger people like my daughter, I have a 20-year-old daughter, are pissed off at the rich, at the powerful, and whatnot. I am very distrustful of systems that are radically say, let's kill and guillotine the landlords and the rich and everything else. I am very scared of those people. We don't have to go into all the details of what happens when those systems are in power. They need to be, yes, controlled, regulated, balanced out, but not these systems. Why are these people pissed off? They get this college debt. They study to become an electrical engineer, according to one DSA activist, for example, in the Philadelphia area, because they got in debt. They couldn't find their job and everything else. The jobs weren't there. Because why? Financialization, cutbacks, layoffs, the nature of our economy. So they think that, oh, socialism, which DSA, I mean, they have their, I don't think they're even left the social
They're
democratic.
Democratic Socialists of America. The clue's in the name.
They basically,
clue's in the name.
Yeah, I can give you a history of them. We can discuss that. It's a fascinating history, but
they're
basically Marxists. They're basically Marxists with a heavy amount of Marxist-Leninists. And I talked about this on a Convoy show, by the way, and my concerns about that. And there are things I agreed with them on. But anyways, we have to address the grievances of young people. We can't say, oh, just you're a bunch of lazy fucks.
Well, I mean, yes, there are problems, but I would argue that there are many people on all sides who are exacerbating people's fears, they're creating this kind of what I would call, and we're straying a little off topic here, but I think it's important to discuss for the overall thing. There are a lot of people who are, especially younger people, who are being taught learned helplessness, right? That, look, the economy's so bad. Look, the state of the world is so bad. There's nothing you can do. We need to have a total overhaul of the system, or there's nothing that will happen. And so just be angry. And there's no looking at how, even within this system, that flawed it may be, that you can make yourself better off within that. And I do think that there are bad actors on a lot of sides who are pushing this because they feel it helps them to create a situation in America where everyone feels like there's nothing they can do. And they're going to use that to gain influence and power. Like, they will say, well, there's nothing you can do, so you have to listen to me for the truth, right? I will be the change that you want to see. Just donate your time and your money. And gang, don't forget to like and subscribe and super chat and all that, right, while you're watching this, right? But you know what I mean, right? And I think that when we come to radical civic nationalism, to kind of tie this back into the discussion, I worry sometimes with kind of like the populist rhetoric that I've heard from you a little bit today about the wealthy elites and etc. does play into that a little. Again, I'm not saying you're wrong in identifying problems. And this is a problem I have with a lot of extremist ideologies. Not to say yours specifically is extremist, right? Again, I can't pigeonhole your whole ideology in one conversation. But it does tend to teach this kind of... I am anti-populist. I'm anti-nationalist. I'm anti-populist. Just cards on the table here. I think that it does identify problems, but the solutions it proposes are unworkable. Again, I want to reiterate, the proposed solutions of protectionism that I've heard you kind of, even incremental protectionism, I don't think it's going to make our nation better. I think it's going to make us more xenophobic, regardless of what you intend. And I think it's going to be used and utilized by bad actors, because you mentioned that there are a lot of other types of nationalists on X and Twitter and other social medias who may call you pussies, if you want to say that word, right?
Yeah, and they don't like civic nationalism.
Exactly. I would posit to you, based on what I've seen, and I admit this is anecdotal, that there's a lot more of them than there are of you.
Yeah, and I'm worried about that.
And
I
that's
recommend
why.
policies that are actually moderate
Sure.
and were considered middling policies, like the New Deal. A lot of New Deal legislation, progressive legislation, protectionism work, but you don't be dumb about it. Look, I share your concerns. You have people that misuse it, and there are toxic populists all the time that are highly authoritarian, and I worry about them too.
But the
Um,
reason I highlight that and highlight the disparity in influence and numbers is because I think that going down your route isn't going to go, like, you're not going to be in charge of that, and you're not going to be able to make these decisions if we go down the nationalist route. It's going to be them, and that's going to be the problem.
well, you know what? I got it, and I'm not being rude and
No, be rude.
pushing
It's
back.
okay. Be
I
rude.
gotta
Go ahead.
but it's just not my style. You're not saying anything that pisses me off. So,
Sure.
and everything. So, but the bottom line is I have to start somewhere. I could be sitting in my couch over here, watching. Well, I don't actually do that. I like fitness a lot and going out and stuff, but I could be sitting around just talking with my friends, bitching and complaining about
Sure.
politics. But I got to do something. Some veterans that I used to work with said, you know what, Nevin, you know a lot, you have a lot of these very interesting views that are so practical and whatnot. Why don't you go out there and start writing and get yourself out there? Because I got to be honest, I'm terrified of these people too. They would put me in a concentration camp. I've talked with a few. I like to get and understand what, and I said flat out to anybody, there's two individuals, one from New Frontier USA, the other which is a now defunct group, and another one who was, let's just say, kicked out of the U.S. military. And these are very bright individuals. One knows more about the history of fascism and National Socialism than equal the academics. And I asked them why you joined these groups. One said in his native Ohio, the cultural degeneracy, which I don't subscribe to those views because I'm much more center left on those social issues. So that kind of not my thing. But he also said much as his family's livelihoods were destroyed with the outsourcing of General Motors. So I look and see what reforms within the system of the republic, small r, as well as that have been used historically in this country, that has worked, as well as anti-predatory finance legislation that has been used to basically make people's lives better as long as you work hard, you play by the rules. I know that's a cliche, but I'm going to use it because that's what comes to mind. And then you're going to have de-radicalization. During the middle part of the 20th century, you had Theodore Adorno, you had the CPUSA, and others who were like, look, we can't, like, laissez-faire capitalism, boom bust cycles and whatnot, that's been abolished. We have difficulty making revolution. According to Larry Grathwohl, for example, he was a former FBI informant within the Weather Underground, which is a communist terrorist movement, those of you who don't know.
In the 60s and 70s.
I know you know that, but
fair enough,
for those who don't know. And he revealed that they were happy that the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, was also a presidential candidate in 1968, was killed because the liberals massage out meaning New Deal liberals, massage the class and basically cancel the class struggle and class polarization. And that's why people like me are hated by the radical left, by National Socialists. You look at what Lord Keynes was portrayed as this communist, this Nazi lover by right-wing free marketeer people. But when you look at those whole quotes on Bolshevism and National Socialism, it was actually quite the opposite. In fact, the Nazis in the Vienna, Austria edition of the Volkischer Beobachter from 1944, that was one of the Nazi Party newspapers, translates the People Observer, and it talks about how people like me, probably I suspect people like you to a degree, we're basically just covering up and propping up plutocracy.
Oh, look, I get that all the time. Nazi enabler, Wick, right? All that, right? Like the guy who's if we could only get rid of those liberals, we could have our ideal utopia. That we from the right, from the left, we get it all sides. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so that's my concern. So
Mm.
I'm using things that work in history. And as you read my things, I mean, even the views evolve over time, even since I've made some of my writings. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
evolving. You know, when I was having a conversation with another streamer, one of the, I would call him an anarcho-communist, is that anti-Stalinist, anti-Maoist, anti-tanky, anti-Hamas, also critical of the extreme Zionists. I'm not going to mention names in private conversations, but you know, he said something interesting to me. He says, you know, you're evolving. You're not changing your views and going 360 degrees, totally changing your values. Your values are the same, Nevin, but you're evolving as you get new information without.
How those values play out in the real world. I get what you're saying. I have one last question though, before
Mhm.
you go and before I have to go. I don't know if you're aware of the recent Taylor Lorenz article, because this has to do with money in politics, right? Which I think is something that civic nationalism would be concerned with.
Yeah, I
Um,
am concerned about it.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So Taylor Lorenz wrote an article on a group called Chorus recently, which is a Democratic, liberal kind of group. I think it's run by. I don't have all the details. I'm still researching this as we go, right?
Me
Because
too. Me too.
right.
I just came across it
Yeah, yeah,
myself.
yeah. But basically, it's talking about how there is allegedly a group called Chorus that is paying influencers in order to spout off certain ideas. And there's allegations that they're not allowed to say that they're paid, but those are contested by David Pakman and
Yeah.
Brian Tyler. I'm sorry, not David Pakman. Forgive me.
You
Brian
know,
Tyler
David
Cohen.
Pakman contested it too.
Oh, he might
He had a
have.
quote.
But Brian,
Yeah,
Brian Tyler Cohen, I think, is the guy that runs it, basically.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
right.
and I'm just curious, is under a radical civic nationalist system through that lens, what would the regulations be around groups paying in to create media empires, if you will, right? Like this. What would be the is this something that's allowed under a radical civic nationalist system, or something that you would put the tap on? Like, what about other groups such as the
I would
Daily
have to
Wire?
explore the issue
Sure.
more with that. I think when it comes to nonprofits in general,
Okay.
I know with the laws, and correct me if I'm wrong, there should be a lot more disclosure
Mm.
on who's getting what. I'm torn on that because you know the problem is the nonprofit systems are, and maybe I'm going off topic, are abused. The corporate right has been known for that, like Club for Growth
Yep.
and
Yep.
APR and others. That's an issue. So at bare minimum, I would like a lot more disclosure.
Okay.
I know with David Pakman, I believe he had a video response because he's been getting bombarded. I mean, agree or disagree with him or somewhere between, this is what he said. And it is an interesting point. He said basically, with all the money piled in the corporate right, I mean, I'm using some of my own
Certainly.
phraseology,
Certainly.
what choice do we have? What I would do as a radical civic nationalist is I would bring experts in the field who share my vision more or less, who have ideally a respect for freedom of speech and exchange of ideas, but also a recognition that wealthy individuals and groups or deep-pocketed organizations also want to pervert the political process for their own ends to the detriment of what's good public policy or what's good for the country. And that's what I would do. I know it's not popular in some quarters to consult with people that know more than you, but I think you have the first job in leadership is, yes, A, have confidence, But you also have to not project that you're a know-it-all, a wise ass, and say, "Oh, I know everything," and that's the end of the story. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm gonna pull this expert, say, "Yo, what's going on? Hey, what's your opinion on this? Let's have a meeting with a group of people. Let's work it out. What are all the facts? Put it in a digestible fashion. Click, do that." And that's what I would do. I mean, the other issues I spoke with, because I did the research, I've had a little political experience with working as campaign volunteers, primarily years ago with Republicans. So, yeah, I used to be a conservative, Reagan conservative, moved into the John Birch Society, did not renew my membership with them. We could talk about it on a different show.
I'm well aware of the John Birch Society, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yep. And I talk about it in my essays and whatnot. Why? I have another one coming up. We could do a whole show on it. And then I eventually started to move into my direction. And I leverage a lot of policies. I'm very syncretic in my viewpoints. It's very hybrid ideology that I have. And I leverage it for what on the surface could be considered conservative goals or outcomes, but I often will leverage progressive sounding policies to do that, with some dashes of libertarianism and civic nationalism, because I like to make the distinctions between things like capitalism and nationalism, because it's like what Nick Hanauer, one of my business heroes, if you want to call him as such, said. He's like, yeah, there's the capitalism is like, choosing pies. There's dirt pie, or I'll say shit pie, and then there's cherry pie, and my favorite, pecan pie. So it comes in all different flavors. And yeah, there's a lot of nationalisms that are shit pie. National Socialism, Baathism in Iraq, fascism. Yeah, the Christian nationalism, that comes in different flavors too. The Ustashas in Croatia, Slovakia, they were Catholic extreme nationalists. The Afrikaner National Party, they were kind of, if you want to use the word loosely, very socialistic. And of course, highly racialistic too, as you know. And, so there's a lot of different nationalisms. I'm aware of that. And there are a number of them that I don't subscribe to because, like you, I do like a very, very large, heavy helping of individual liberties that are enjoyed by average people. I really am not interested in recreating authoritarianism. You read my essays on National Socialism, Fascism, and Communism on Substack. Why I'm not that, it's scathing in its critiques.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you for inviting me on and talking with me. And I think we still disagree on a few things, but that's okay. I do understand more what you are about than I did when I initially started this discussion. So that's always good. Is there a place where people can find you if they want to find you? If people in my audience are like, I want to see more about what this guy has to say, where can they find you?
Yeah, you could go to New Ideas, which is the name of my podcast on YouTube. And there are people that I don't agree with them. There are some people that sometimes I don't get into arguments with them because then it's just, you're almost hijacking.
Sure.
There are some people that are really very right-wingy, but I also have people on the left like Matt McManus, Econoboy before he retired, labor union leaders like Charles Daniels and others. You could find my works on Substack, Wilderness and Mirrors. I know the essays are very dense, but they're packed with a lot of information you might not get elsewhere. And also, I have a bunch of self-published books on Amazon.com. Now, for my audience, where could people find your work? Because let me just preface it.
Go ahead.
Wick TV and Wick here, he's a veteran. He's a patriot. He does a lot of excellent work advocating for American interests against the Sino-Russian axis. He's for a strong national defense. He is for backing our allies, and that is very important, and that is inviting for a portion of our viewership and New Ideas. So with that preamble, where can people find your work, your social media?
You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on X at Wick TV. On YouTube specifically, it's at Wick-TV because someone took the name before I had it, but that's okay. Yeah, WHICK-TV. I do all sorts of conversations. I usually do panel debates, though I also have sit-down one-on-ones. Next week, for example, we are going to be talking with Ryan Mullally on natural rights and also heritage Americanism. Again, I really, really want to stress this as kind of like the closing thoughts, if you will, is that I think a love for one's country and people is a good thing. It's something that we can take pride in where we come from and our heritage. But that becomes a problem when it turns into an us versus them tribalistic kind of mentality. I want people around the world to be like me. I want them to share my ideals and ideas, and I want to include as many people in that pie as I can. I think American exceptionalism is real, and it should be defended. We do need a strong military. We do need to support our allies in much stronger ways than we currently are under this administration. And I want to see a return to more free trade, which, again, we disagree here, but I think free trade has made us a much freer people. Thank you again for the invite. Is there anything else?
No, I definitely would like to. I think you referenced this earlier. I would like to have continuing conversations with you. I like these discussions. It kind of gets my mind going. It's like what one of my colleagues at work calls the mental massage. I really like that. You're very civil. And I also appreciate your experience, too, with what you revealed a little bit about your biography. So that I think we have certain major common interests in common, if you will. We share a lot of common concerns. So I look forward to future discussions with you. Just hit me up. Thank you for coming on my show too as well. And be safe, everyone. God bless. Be good to each other. Take care. Enjoy the Labor Day weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, gang. Did you guys hold on, let me get hold on, give me a second. Okay, give me a second. Oh, he wanted to use Google Meets. So I couldn't make myself bigger. I want to be big. I want to be a big guy, okay? Here, let me see if we can get to nope, that's not it. Here we are. We're back. We're back, baby. Okay? We're back, baby. Did you guys like that conversation? Super low key compared to some of the other conversations we've had recently. Okay, it's more it wasn't really a debate, because I wasn't. Look, I'll be real. I wasn't sure what I was getting into with this guy. He's all over the place when I look at his Substack and his YouTube videos and things like that. So I wanted to kind of give him some grace here and see what he had to present. Again, I think that it is naive to think nationalism can be compatible with individual liberties. I think that throughout history, we've seen that not happen. And we could give countless examples, but I didn't want to circle too much on that. We did go back and forth, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't get stuck, if you will. Again, I disagree with him on the free trade aspect, but that's a whole nother conversation to have. Very, very into the weeds we'd have to get with that. And frankly, on economic issues specifically, I'm fairly weak. It's why you don't see me debate much on very specific economic issues. I'm more strong on foreign policy. I'm more strong on domestic issues. I'm more strong on cultural issues. But when it comes to specific economics, outside of a tariff debate, Econo Boy was a guy I'd call in as my ringer when I wanted to, before he became socialist, okay? Before he became socialist. AKA Batozai says, I wonder if Sitch would say similar things if you grilled him. I'd love to have him on. I'd love to have Sitch on to kind of be in the hot seat on a Wick and Tally show sometime, right? I know we've gone on the Sitch and Adam show before, or the Adam and Sitch show. But I'd love to kind of like reverse roles and kind of pick his brain a little bit at some point, maybe. Gang, where is everyone today? Like, I got like 300 concurrent yesterday, 350 concurrent, and today I got like 18. One of the lowest turnouts I've ever seen in this year, I think. This might be my least attended stream for the year. Where is it? Just because it's Labor Day weekend? Are you guys all on vacation? I don't know. That was a great discussion. You guys missed it. Well, the ones who are here, yeah, thanks for being here. And yeah, it was later than I normally do, and it is a Friday, and it is Labor Day weekend, so maybe it's that. Next week we got some great stuff coming up. The Wick and Tally show's coming back on Tuesday. On Monday, I'm going to be talking to Ryan Mullally. We're going to go over the foundation, like liberalism as it applies to the foundation of our country and how it's being attacked today. We're going to go over the ideas of propositional nations versus heritage Americans, and that the tension there. On Thursday, I'm putting together a show on the chorus stuff. I'm still researching, right, to get my opinion more solid, but at first blush, I think Taylor Lorenz has very much misrepresented what chorus is. Okay, I'm willing to change my mind on this because, again, like I said, I haven't delved deep, but from what I have seen, Taylor Lorenz is off a rocker. Okay, calling this some kind of dark money conspiracy kind of bullshit. It just doesn't look to be that. Okay, it doesn't look to be that. It looks to be a creator program where they're funding creators, but they're not controlling their content, much like Progressive Victory was. And do you guys remember the shit they gave me for being in Progressive Victory? Okay, even though I fully disclosed and everything, the amounts of arguments we had and the amounts of misrepresentation on what that was. It's crazy, crazy stuff. Concluding postscript says Taylor Lorenz celebrates the Houthis and the assassination of CEOs. Yeah, she's kind of crazy. Chorus, please get Wick a camera with more pixels. Do you not like my camera? What's wrong with my camera? So from my research, Testy Johnson, it's funded by the 360 group, I think it's called, which also funds Taylor Lorenz. So, or at least it funds the group that funds Taylor Lorenz. So, it's kind of like weird. But, again, I want to be clear. I haven't dived deep into this. So, grain of salt, everything I'm saying right now. Connor keeps getting grief? Of course he does. Zero Fuck says, I don't know why the whole funding thing doesn't really bother me. Yeah, look, as long as people are upfront about it, it's... Bros, I gotta get paid. I can't do this for free. I just got my, funny. I just got my first, Twitter. I just became monetized on Twitter this month. Or last month. This month? Last month? I don't know. But I got paid. I got a payout. It was way more than I thought. I got, it was about $400, $387 just for yapping on Twitter for a month. Crazy. Why didn't I do this sooner? Just for tweeting out bullshit. What's going on? Yeah. Good incentive to post more crazy shit. Like it wasn't even that crazy. Mostly I did memes. And I reply guide. That's basically what I did. Why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I push for monetization sooner? I don't get it. What, am I stupid? Maybe. I didn't know it would be that much. I thought it'd be like maybe $20. or something, right? I thought I'd maybe be getting like $20 here, $20 there. And I was like, I don't care about that shit. But then like, yeah, I got the notification while we were sitting here, and I had to do a double check. I was like, what is that, $38 or is that? No, that's $380. Shit. So not quite 400, but I'm rounding up because it sounds cooler. For how much time? I'm just posting throughout the day. I'm Twitter posting. I'm tweeting. Okay. It's literally just, I don't even stream on X. So yeah, it's just literally doing what, look. It's literally liking thirst traps and reply guying to Ock 2000 to that Yeet guy. Okay. I don't even reply guy Destiny anymore. Think of the money to be made by just reply guying. Think of the cash I will be dragging in. That's a good chunk. That's like it's close to a tenth of my income a month. Just boom. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe it's a fluke though. Maybe this month's a fluke. We'll see. Yeah, W thirst traps. Maybe I should post more thirst traps. Maybe that's what's gonna get the. So yeah, the biggest thing that was preventing me from getting monetized Solemn Argus for a long time was you need a certain number of verified followers. Do they back pay? I don't think so. Was it back pay? I'll have to look. I don't think it was, though. I don't think, why would they back pay? And when would they start back paying from? Yeah, back pay does not make sense. So I don't think they do. But yeah, you have to have like a certain number of verified followers and a certain number of impressions per month. I had the impressions for a long time, okay? But the verified follower count I needed, I was like 100 short for a long time. Yes, you pay for verification on Twitter, or someone can gift it to you. So someone gifted me a year verification, a year membership for the blue check, but to get monetized is different. So being verified is different than being monetized, okay? So you can be verified but not monetized, which I was not monetized until last month. Better Methodist for $10 says, need a job? I can get you one of my Uncle Mordecai's used car lot. Sucking farts out of old car seats. Only pays minimum wage and you have to provide your own straw. Upside, it's all you can eat. Thank you for the $10, Mr. Fetter Methodist. Thank you. Do you guys want more conversations like that, by the way? Or do you want... I don't know. It's always... I can never tell what you guys want, frankly. I have not yet solved the algorithm, but it's okay. Oh, what am I doing? What is going on? Okay. It's Classics Pyramid Scheme? Maybe, but I'm making bank, bro. I'm making bank. I'll post more Lola pics, maybe. Kinetic Pause says, I like it better than your Manosphere streams, but you get better numbers from those. Yeah, look, if I want to make a lot of money real quick, I just do a gender war stream, okay? I'll just get Xerxes on to fight some women and make a few $100 in a single stream, okay? I don't know. Okay, gang, I love you all. I hope you have a good weekend. Is it Labor Day or whatever? I don't know. I didn't know that. Weird. I don't usually Except for the major ones, like the work holiday stuff, I just miss because I don't work. I'm a streamer. All right. Testy Johnson, if you want to be an anti-chorus voice on Thursday, by all means, I'm looking for one more. You could join us. But yeah, I'll see you guys Monday. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.